Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we are doing a cinematography breakdown of my latest short film, The Stakeout. Let's dive on in. Alright guys, so this is a new series I'm working on where I am shooting narrative-based scenes or short films and then breaking down how exactly we lit these various scenes and environments, how I directed and worked with talent, how we booked and acquired locations, and different subject matters like that, so you guys can take this information, apply it practically to your own practice in business, and hopefully create much better and more cinematic short films, commercials, music videos, etc., etc., etc. So with that being said, let's go ahead and break this down. So with this short film, this scene, if you will, really guys, we're all living really right here in front of a house inside a car. Again, the stakeout, it's all about two individuals having a conversation. And now these individuals aren't cops, but they are actual vigilantes about to commit their own versions of justice, or better yet, revenge, in the words of Tyler, one of the characters.
No, this is about revenge. I'm going to kill every last one of them.
So with that being said, I'm really gonna keep it pretty short and sweet because, we kept all of the lighting relatively the same, just kind of moving some different elements around, which I'll talk about. How we plan to shoot this film and be the most efficient as possible was we wanted to get the core content captured first. So that was all the dialogue, conversation, the bulk of the video right there in front of the house in the car. So before the finding the guy, tracking him down, getting to the house, gunfire's going off, before any of the really heightened action sequences, we wanted to get the bulk of it. So we parked the car right in front of the house, set up our lighting so we could start recording. Now that's a little about that process. Now talking about the lighting that we used. So our key light was a Godox TL60 tube light on a daylight balance. I believe it was about 5200 or maybe around like 4800, somewhere around there. And really this is just kind of trying to act as though it's ambient kind of moonlight being our source. Now additionally, I don't want to call this necessarily our key light. I'll say key light hesitantly because it was the light that was lighting me and Garrett, the main actors and subjects, in the car. However, the light that was really our most prominent source was the Falconized light mat. Incredible, super mobile lighting device to use. And so we set this on a tungsten balance around 26 or 2700. The idea with this light mat here and shining for nice backlight, one, if you guys haven't heard me talk about it in any of my past videos, I always talk about backlight. It's my number one go-to whenever I enter a new location or environment. I'm always planning on backlight and then thinking about how I can make the other lighting or take away lighting to better work with that. Backlighting makes for incredibly cinematic, just captivating images. So we have this really nice, strong backlight. Again, we have it on tungsten balance. We have it up high, shining at a 45. So what this emulates is a street light. So again, guys, everything we're doing here, like we're doing intentionally. We're thinking about how does this relate to reality and how one would actually perceive things. So again, we've got the moonlight that's naturally kind of hitting the car and lighting the subjects at night. Then we've got the tungsten Falconized light mat, again, hitting us from the back, giving us some strong edging rimming on the body so we stand out, we add more depth to the image, and again, emulating a street light. Now the next piece of lighting we had was a Pavo 2.6C. We had that on top of the sunroof, shining through the glass on us. Again, just giving me and Garrett a little bit of top light. Again, this is kind of emulating street light as well as kind of like the inside of a car, right? Like the top lights of your car just kind of being on when you're sitting there. So we had those going on, and then we had two more light sources that we were predominantly using, both again being Nanlite Pavo Tube 6Cs. These are the mini Pavo tubes. So we had one in the back, and we just had this again to kind of add a little bit more depth. So we had this all the way behind the car. Now the Falconized light mat is kind of behind on the driver's side, but it's pretty much positioned right around where the passenger would sit behind the driver. Then we had another Pavo Tube 6C, and again, we put that completely entirely behind the back trunk of the car, and so it could shine through a little bit. So this just, again, adds depth. It emulates, being a street light, and so it feels like good quality, motivated light. It doesn't feel weird, like it doesn't belong there, or anything obscure like that. Lastly, now this was kind of more experimental, and this we just did because it added intensity to the scene through color, of course, and then again, it just helped kind of give us something a little special, help make our film just stand out and be a little different. So we added a red tube light. Again, this is a Pavo Tube 6C from Nainlight, just had it on a red hue. We had that just out of frame and behind me. And again, obviously the main point with that being is my character is the protagonist. I'm going through this very dark, scary, treacherous time in my life where I want to kill a bunch of individuals. Not actually, just my character, Tyler. I'm Kyle. Kyle's cool. Tranquilo. And so we wanted to use that to kind of edge and give me a good rim light, and again, just really heighten the intensity of this stakeout scene. And so that's what we did. Again, we had it on about a 45-degree angle, just sitting on a C-stand just outside of frame. And again, we were able to really work with just this lighting, just like that, guys, to really light and create this entire project. Now, as we're changing camera angles, in order to capture all of my dialogue points and Garrett's dialogue points, and then we're cutting to go to wide frontal shot to see both of us talking, different things like that. Like, of course, now we're having to kind of adjust and move the lighting. But again, really, this was our lighting setup the entire time. So again, we have Falconized light mat for backlight. We have Godox TL60 tube light for source light, 3 Pavo Tube 6Cs that we are using for various different setups. And all we did is float and move those around. Now again, as we have to get different angles or we have to get wider angles, for instance, we're pulling those out and pulling them further apart. Now there was some specifically very wide angle shots, or better yet, establishing shots that we had to completely pull the lights all the way out. And so what we did is we got rid of the 2 Pavo Tube 6Cs, the red light and the tungsten balance in the back behind the car, because we can't have those there, we'll see those. We had to pull the Falconized light mat back out to the end of the street, again, because we can't have it sitting right behind the car. And then we had to pull the Godox TL60 tube light back out of frame. And so what we did is we pulled the Godox TL60 tube light back out of frame, flew it up, and just blasted as high as we could with output. So that's giving us nice solid moonlight ambient light. And then we pulled the Falconized light mat back, and we actually kind of turned it more front facing to the car. So again, if the house is right here, car is in front, camera's right here, there's nothing lighting this car, and my car is black, right? So we just lose everything there. It's just utter blackness. So we moved the Falconize and pulled it from sitting right next to the car, wrapped it around to the front, and we have that going as some ambient light lighting up the car, so we can kind of see all the details and such from there. And then moving forward, talking about the red light. So again, we have to be intentional. We have to think motivation. Like, the red light can't be there for close-ups and then suddenly it's gone for wides, right? Like, there has to be intention, it has to make sense. So what we did is we pulled it back and set it inside the porch area of the house to kind of emulate almost like it's a little house light, some kind of house light sitting on the porch. And so for the wides, it functions, it's motivated, and then that correlates directly to the close-ups and the medium shots, and just it makes perfect sense. So really thinking about your lighting setups in this sense, guys, being mindful again, like, it's important to understand things like that. If you're going to use specific lighting setup in your close-ups, you need to make sure when you pull out wide that it can still make sense. And so you have to be a lot more intentional in your thought process when you're thinking about your lighting styles, especially for narrative-based work. It's not as experimental as a music video, where things can be entirely different, right? Because you're not trying to create a reality, you're playing in the fantasy. Whereas with short films, more often than not, you're trying to create a world that feels real, that people believe. And the second I do something that breaks that trust, the audience no longer believes me. They no longer believe my story. So being very, very intentional about your lighting, guys, is just so important. Now, of course, again, we got some other shots traveling and getting some stuff on the streets. Again, we really just brought some Pavo Tube 6Cs and the TL60 tube lights so we could do some quick lighting setups on the go. The real focus in the lighting setup I wanted to show and display for you guys was the short film piece and us really having that conversation inside the car and that full setup there. So again, the wides, we moved and pulled the lights back. For the gunshot stuff, we took a TL60 tube light inside and timed it up with a strobe to fake gunshots. And that's really it, guys. That's the bulk of how we really created something like this. Again, it's amazing what you can do with some pretty simple lighting gear. Now again, I know it can tack up and get relatively expensive, so I say that with hesitance, but again, we're talking about some Godox TL60 tube lights, talking about a couple Pavo 60 tube lights, and then we're talking about a falconized light mat. So in reality, guys, we never really used a giant source light. You know, we're not using an Aperture 600D, or we don't need an RE sky panel kit or anything like that, right? Like we're making it work with kind of minimal gear. And additionally, you know, we kind of went above and beyond, adding more stylization with the red lights. Again, you know, I don't know if we necessarily had to use the light mat for a backlight. We could have used my other TL62 light. And so, you know, some of those decisions we just made because we wanted to do that. You know, us as creatives, as filmmakers, want to make it as best as possible, but understand you can do it with even less. So I hope this motivates you guys. I hope this gives you some insight on some different lighting setups you can do, how you can create some really cool, badass narrative scenes, specifically maybe a stakeout. So yeah, would love to see any kind of renditions or versions of this. Maybe create your own story and send me your setup. Would love to see how you maybe did things differently, maybe any issues or questions you have. So I really want to make this, you know, more engaging, more interactive, something we can all learn and grow from. Of course, you know, I'm still growing and learning. I always will be, and so it's fun to learn from you guys and see your different lighting styles as well. That's it for this week's video, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up.
So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the content, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Woof. Okay.
Let's keep running.